Mr. Clyburn. 5 minutes.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding me the time, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to take note of the sad irony that the extreme Republicans' majority is bringing this appropriations bill to the floor on the 75th anniversary of President Truman's desegregation of the armed services. President Truman's heritage would suggest that he'll be an unlikely champion for civil rights. He grew up in a segregated town in Missouri, in a family that owned slaves and defended slavery. But when our 33rd president heard of the blinding of Sergeant Isaac Woodard, Jr., a decorated Black World War II veteran who was brutally attacked by a police officer while traveling home to Winsboro, South Carolina, on a Greyhound bus, still in his uniform, after being honorably discharged, Truman was moved to forsake his upbringing and desegregate the armed forces. President Truman courageously recognized and acted to further our nation's fundamental obligation to our service members and veterans, regardless of their backgrounds. We should be working to build upon the progress he made, but regrettably, the Milcom-VA bill that the majority is bringing to the floor today would constitute a significant step backward. This ill-conceived legislation, in addition to reducing funds for the military construction projects that are fundamental to our service members' quality of life, is also an attack on the dignity of our veterans. It attacks the dignity of women veterans by blocking reproductive health care when their health is endangered. It attacks the dignity of veterans in need to gender-reaffirming care by blocking the VA from providing it even if it is recommended by a doctor. It attacks the dignity of veterans and all Americans of color and others who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality by blocking the Biden administration's ongoing efforts to advance equity. President Truman recognized that our national security is enhanced by respecting the dignity of all American patriots who sacrifice to defend it. This legislation being brought today by the extreme Republican majority is at odds with that principle. If the members of today's extreme Republican majority were in office in 1948, I fear they would have attacked President Truman's desegregation order as an unacceptable diversity, equity, and inclusion measure, which Section 417 of this legislation would ban. I fear that if this bill were enacted into law, it would prevent the military from discussing the blinding of Sergeant Isaac Woodard as its influence on President Truman, because the topic would be deemed critical race theory, which would be banned by Section 415 rather than the historical fact that it was. Will this section ban our military from making repairs to the GI Bill benefits that were denied Black World War II veterans? Mr. Speaker, when President Truman was informed of Isaac Woodard's blinding, he reportedly exclaimed, and I quote, "My God, I had no idea it was as terrible as that. We have got to do something." Sadly, this extreme Republican majority seems to find ways to be terrible every week. I rise in opposition to the consideration of this awful bill because Democrats know we have got to do something to prevent them from pushing us off the track toward a more perfect union. President Truman so courageously advanced 75 years ago today. And I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman.